In 1944, a soldier could be handed a can of ham and lima beans so hated that men buried it in the mud rather than eat it. That meal is number 14 on this list. Number 3 held a chocolate the army engineered to survive a jungle, something food scientists are only now rediscovering. Before the MRE existed, this is what fed American soldiers through 3 wars, one greasy can at a time. Hit that subscribe button and let us count down the 25 forgotten C-Ration meals soldiers actually ate. Number 25, beef slices with potatoes and gravy. This was the workhorse of the whole system, the can a soldier could count on when the case ran thin. Grayish slabs of beef floated in a thin brown gravy with a few soft potato chunks, and cold, straight out of the can, it looked about as appetizing as it sounds. But heated over a fuel tab until the fat melted and the gravy loosened, it turned into something close to a pot roast a man could believe in. It was heavy, salty, and it stuck to your ribs for hours, which was the entire point. A single can delivered somewhere north of 400 calories of pure fuel. Soldiers rated it middle of the pack. Not a prize, not a punishment. Trail-worn GIs from Normandy to the Mekong Delta ate this exact can, decades apart, and every one of them learned the same lesson. Heat it or regret it. Number 24, corned beef hash. When the meat unit was hash, a soldier ate well by C-Ration standards. Diced corned beef mixed with shredded potato, seasoned heavier than most of the line, and dense enough to hold a spoon standing up. The magic happened in a canteen cup over a heat tab. You dumped it in, pressed it flat against the metal, and let the bottom crisp into a brown crust while the top stayed soft. That crust was the closest thing to a diner breakfast the field ever offered. Men who grew up on their mother's Sunday hash recognized it instantly. It was the one can that could make a foxhole smell like a kitchen. Some soldiers cracked a stolen egg over it when they could scrounge one from a farmhouse. The hash disappeared from later rations, considered too fatty for modern nutrition standards. But the men who ate it still talk about that crisp brown edge like it was steak. Number 23, spaghetti and meatballs in tomato sauce. Somebody in the Quartermaster Corps decided fighting men needed Italian food, and the result was a can of soft noodles and small meatballs swimming in a bright, slightly sweet tomato sauce. Compared to the endless parade of beef and gravy, this was practically a night out. The noodles came out mushy no matter what you did, but the sauce carried real flavor. And after a week in the field, real flavor was worth more than gold. Soldiers doctored it constantly. A shake of pepper, a crushed cracker on top for texture, a splash of anything sharp. In Korea, men warmed it against the engine block of a truck on a freezing march. The smell of tomato and garlic drifting across a cold hillside pulled tired soldiers toward the can like a magnet. It was proof, however faint, that somebody back home remembered they were still people who liked to eat. Number 22, beans and Frankfurter chunks in tomato sauce. Every soldier knew this one, and every soldier had a nickname for it, most of them unprintable. Officially, it was beans and Franks. Unofficially, it was a punchline. Small slices of hot dog bobbed in a pot of beans and tomato sauce, and while it lacked all dignity, it delivered exactly what a body needed after a long march. Protein, starch, and enough salt to make you drink your whole canteen. Heated up, the beans went soft and the Franks plumped, and the sauce thickened into something a cracker could carry. This was the ancestor of the canned beanie weenies still sitting on grocery shelves today. Soldiers ate it because it was reliable and because it actually tasted like food, which put it miles ahead of the worst cans in the case. Nobody wrote home bragging about it, but when the good cans were gone, the man who ended up with beans and Franks quietly counted himself lucky. Number 21, boned chicken. Now here was a treasure. In a case dominated by mystery meat and gray gravy, a can of boned chicken was the meal soldiers traded 2 or 3 other cans to get. It was simply cooked chicken, deboned, packed in its own broth, mild and clean and blessedly free of the heavy grease that coated everything else. You could eat it cold without gagging, which almost nothing else on the line could claim. Men spread it on crackers, stirred it into their bean cans, or just ate it straight from the tin with a plastic spoon, savoring every bite. Because it was so prized, boned chicken was the first can to vanish from any opened case, snatched up by whoever got there first. A soldier who pulled boned chicken felt like he had won a small lottery. In a world of forced choices, it tasted like an actual decision somebody made on his behalf. Number 20, chopped ham and eggs. And here was the opposite of a treasure. Chopped ham and eggs came out of the can a pale, faintly greenish gray, a color no breakfast food should ever be, and the sight alone turned stomachs. The eggs had a rubbery, spongy texture that squeaked against the teeth, and heating it barely helped. Soldiers who drew this can at dawn often traded it away for almost anything, or choked it down with their eyes half closed. And yet, on a freezing morning with nothing else in the pack, that greenish protein kept men on their feet. Some learned to fry it hard in a canteen cup until the edges browned and the worst of the texture cooked away. It became a running joke across every war it appeared in. The breakfast nobody wanted, and everybody eventually ate. Decades later, veterans still grimace at the memory. Some flavors, it turns out, are unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Number 19, canned white bread. It sounds impossible, but the C-Ration included actual bread sealed inside a can, soft, pale, and faintly sweet. Cracking open a can of bread in the field felt almost luxurious after weeks of teeth-cracking crackers. It came out moist and pillowy, holding its shape, ready to be torn into pieces and used to sop up gravy or wrap around a slice of meat like a rough sandwich. The sealed can kept it fresh far longer than any loaf had a right to stay. For a soldier used to hardtack-style biscuits, this was civilization in a tin. Men saved their bread cans for the meals that needed them most, pairing them with the beef and gravy or the beans to build something that felt closer to a proper dinner. When later rations dropped the canned bread, older soldiers noticed immediately. It was one of the few things on the line that reminded them of a table with a cloth on it. Number 18, the crackers. When there was no bread, there were crackers. Dense, round biscuits packed into the B-unit can that could survive being dropped, kicked, rained on, and run over. These were the direct descendants of Civil War hardtack, and they were nearly as tough. Eaten dry, they threatened to break a tooth and left a man desperate for water. But that hardness was the whole design. They lasted for years without spoiling and traveled through any abuse the field could throw at them. Soldiers learned to crumble them into hot coffee to soften them, or spread them thick with peanut butter and jam to make them go down easier. Crushed into a can of stew, they thickened the whole thing into something heartier. Bland, hard, and endlessly practical, the crackers were the quiet foundation of the ration, the thing that was always there when everything better was gone. Number 17, peanut butter. That little tin of peanut butter tucked into the B unit was one of the hardest working items in the entire ration. Thick, oily, and rich, it turned a stack of dry crackers into a real snack and delivered a wallop of calories and fat that a fighting body burned through fast. Soldiers spread it on everything, ate it by the spoonful, and mixed it into other cans to add body and flavor. It never spoiled, never froze solid, and never lost its appeal, which made it prime trading currency across every unit. A man low on peanut butter could always find a taker for whatever he had to swap. In the cold, it turned stiff and had to be worked with a spoon. In the jungle heat, it went soft and spreadable. Either way, it was there, dependable and calorie-dense. The humble tin that quietly kept soldiers going between the meals they actually looked forward to. First pattern break. Here is where the truth about C-Rations gets practical. None of this food mattered if you could not open the can or heat what was inside. and the tools soldiers used became legends of their own. The star was the P-38, a tiny folding can opener barely an inch and a half long that Marines nicknamed the John Wayne because supposedly it was tough enough to take on anything. Men wore them on their dog tag chains and guarded them like sacred objects because losing yours meant begging or prying cans open with a bayonet. Heating was its own art. The ration came with small fuel tabs that burned with a faint chemical stink, but soldiers in Vietnam discovered something better and far more dangerous. A pinch of C4 explosive burned hot and fast and would boil a canteen cup in seconds. It was against every rule, and everyone did it anyway. Others built tiny stoves from empty ration cans, punching holes in the sides for air. The can was only half the meal. The other half was ingenuity. Number 16, cheese spread. The processed cheese unit was a small triumph of military food science, a soft, spreadable cheese sealed in a can that would not spoil in a hot pack for months. Some versions came plain, some studded with tiny bits of pimento, and some carried caraway seeds that split a pinion straight down the middle. On a hard cracker, warmed slightly so it went smooth and melty, it was one of the genuine pleasures of the line. Soldiers melted it into beans, layered it onto meat, or ate it straight when nothing else appealed. Because it kept so well and tasted so rich, cheese was another high-value trade item, right up there with the fruit and the pound cake. A well-heated cracker with melted cheese and a smear of jam was the kind of small, constructed luxury a soldier could build with his own hands out of the pieces in his can. In a life short on comforts, those small assemblies mattered. Number 15, meatloaf. The canned meatloaf was one of the more honest entrees in the ration. A solid loaf of seasoned ground meat that actually resembled the thing your mother made on a weeknight. Sliced from the can and warmed, it browned a little at the edges and firmed up into something you could eat with real satisfaction. Cold, it held together well enough to slice onto crackers and build a sandwich, which put it a cut above the meals that turned to grease the moment the can cooled. Soldiers appreciated meatloaf for its texture more than its flavor, the fact that it stayed together and behaved like food. It was hearty, filling, and familiar. Three things a homesick soldier valued more than any spice. It never rose to the level of the boned chicken, but it never sank to the depths of the ham and eggs either. Meatloaf was the steady middle, and in the field, steady was praise. Number 14, ham and lima beans. Here is the one every veteran remembers, and almost none of them remember fondly. Officially, it was ham and lima beans. Unofficially, it carried a nickname so profane it cannot be said here, a nickname passed down through every war the ration survived. The limas came out pale and mealy, the ham fatty and sparse, and the whole thing sat in a thin, greasy liquid that congealed the second it cooled. Cold, it was nearly inedible. Even hot, it tested a man's hunger against his standards. Soldiers traded it away, gave it away, and in more than one account, simply buried it in the dirt rather than face it. And yet the army kept making it, war after war, because the beans were cheap, the calories were real, and desperate men would eventually eat anything. Ham and lima beans became the shared punchline of American soldiers across generations. Hate it or not, everybody ate it eventually. That was the deal. Number 13, beef with spiced sauce. Somebody in the ration program understood that the endless brown gravy was crushing morale, and beef with spiced sauce was the answer. Chunks of beef in a sauce that actually had some heat and bite to it. A little kick that woke up a tired palate after days of bland monotony. It was not sophisticated, but that faint spice made it one of the more sought-after meat cans on the line. Heated up, the sauce thickened and clung to the beef, and a cracker crumbled on top gave it real substance. Soldiers who craved any flavor beyond salt and fat went hunting for this can specifically. In the tropics, where a man's appetite could wither in the heat, a little spice was sometimes the only thing that made him finish a meal at all. beef with spiced sauce proved a simple truth the ration designers took too long to learn. Flavor was not a luxury for soldiers. It was fuel for the will to keep eating. Number 12, turkey loaf. When turkey loaf turned up in a case, it moved fast, lighter and milder than the heavy beef entrees. It tasted clean and almost holiday adjacent, which meant more to a soldier than any nutrition label ever could. A slice of turkey loaf on a cracker, warmed just enough to take off the chill, was a small taste of a dinner table far from the mud and noise. Because it carried that whisper of home, turkey loaf was another can that vanished the instant a case was opened, claimed by whoever had the quickest hands. Some men saved theirs for a bad day, a hard march, or a holiday spent in the field, pulling it out when morale needed the lift. It never pretended to be a roast turkey with all the trimmings. But in a foxhole in December, a slice of turkey loaf could carry a man's mind back to a warm kitchen for the length of a single bite. And that was enough. Number 11, scalloped potatoes with ham. This was the C-Ration reaching for comfort food and coming closer than usual. Sliced potatoes and bits of ham in a creamy, mild sauce. It was soft and starchy and gentle in a way almost nothing else on the line managed to be. For a soldier with a raw stomach or a bad tooth, or just a deep weariness with grease and salt, the scalloped potatoes were a small mercy. Warmed through, the sauce turned silky and the potatoes soaked it up, and the whole can went down easy. It was filling without being punishing, familiar without being boring. Men who grew up on farmhouse casseroles recognized it and felt something loosen in their chests. It was not a prize on the level of boned chicken, but it belonged to the small handful of cans a soldier could eat and feel, however briefly, taken care of. In the field, gentleness was rare. This can offered a little. Second pattern break. Here is what the movies never show. The C-Ration was not just food, it was a tiny economy, and every soldier learned to work it. Each meal came with an accessory pack, and that little bundle held the real currency of the field. Instant coffee, sugar, powdered cream, salt, chewing gum, matches, a few sheets of coarse toilet paper, and until 1975, a small 4-pack of cigarettes. That cigarette pack was worth more than any entree to a man who smoked, and trading raged constantly. Beyond trading, there was the art soldiers called working the case, quietly digging through an opened box of rations to grab the boned chicken and the pound cake before anyone else, leaving the ham and limas for the slow and the unlucky. Sergeants tried to make men take cans at random to keep it fair. It rarely worked. The accessory pack, the trading, the digging, it all turned a box of tin cans into a social world with its own winners, losers, and unwritten rules. Number 10, chicken and noodles. A close cousin to the prized boned chicken, chicken and noodles delivered the same mild, welcome flavor in a soft, soupy form that was easy on the stomach and easy on the spirit. Tender noodles and shreds of chicken in a light broth, it was the can a soldier reached for when he was sick, exhausted, or simply worn down by the heavy, greasy meals that made up most of the line. Warmed in a canteen cup, the broth loosened into something close to soup. And there is a reason soup is what people eat when they need comforting. It was hydrating, gentle, and quietly restorative. Men recovering from a rough stretch, a fever, or a punishing march found that chicken and noodles asked almost nothing of them and gave back a little strength. In a ration built for raw survival, it was one of the few cans that seemed to understand a soldier was not just a body to be fueled, but a person who sometimes needed to be comforted. Number 9, pork slices cooked with juices. Pork slices were a solid, unglamorous can that soldiers respected, even if they never got excited about it. Slabs of pork in their own juices, heated until the fat rendered and the edges browned, made a hearty meal that filled the stomach and stayed there. Cold and congealed, it was grim, like most of the meat cans, but given heat and a little patience, it turned genuinely good. The juices, thickened with a crumbled cracker, became a rough gravy that carried real pork flavor. Soldiers paired it with the canned bread or the scalloped potatoes to build a fuller plate out of 2 cans. It was the kind of meal that did not inspire trading wars, but never got buried in the dirt either. Pork slices were dependable, and in the field, dependable was worth a great deal. A man knew exactly what he was getting, and after weeks of choking down surprises, a known quantity was its own kind of comfort. Number 8. Applesauce. In a ration built around meat, fat, and salt, a can of applesauce was a burst of something bright and clean that soldiers craved down in their bones. Smooth, sweet, and cool, it cut through the grease of everything else and gave a tired mouth something gentle to hold on to. It needed no heating, which made it a blessing when a man had no fuel or no time. He could crack the can and eat it straight, and it tasted like an orchard in the middle of a war. Applesauce also sat easy on a stomach turned sour by stress and bad food, which made it doubly valuable. Soldiers spread it on crackers, mixed it into the pound cake for a rough dessert, or just spooned it down and let the sweetness do its work. The fruit cans, applesauce among them, were among the most fought-over items in the whole ration, precisely because they offered the one thing the meat could never provide: relief. Number 7. Jam and jelly. The small tins of jam and jelly seem minor next to the meat and the desserts, but soldiers knew better. A smear of sweet fruit jam transformed the dry, punishing crackers into something a man actually wanted to eat, and it turned a spoonful of peanut butter into a proper treat. Grape, apple, mixed berry, whatever the tin held, that little hit of sugar and fruit flavor lifted a whole meal. Men spread it thick, stirred it into cocoa, or ate it plain when the craving for sweetness got bad enough. Because it made everything else better, jam was steady, trading currency, and rarely went to waste. It was the kind of small, humble component that veterans forget until someone mentions it, and then the memory comes rushing back. The taste of grape jam on a hard cracker, eaten in a trench or on the tailgate of a truck, is stitched into the memory of an entire generation of American soldiers who never thought twice about it at the time. Number 6. Date pudding. The canned puddings were the soft, sweet heart of the ration, and date pudding was one of the best of them. Dense, moist, and rich with chopped dates, it delivered a deep caramel-like sweetness that felt almost decadent after a day of beans and gray meat. There were other puddings and cakes in the rotation, but the dark, sticky date version had a loyal following among men who craved something that tasted like an actual dessert their grandmother might have made. Warmed slightly, it turned gooey and even better. It was the can a soldier saved for the end of a meal, or for a low moment when morale needed a rescue. Because the sweet cans were rare and coveted, date pudding was traded, hoarded, and occasionally used to settle debts between buddies. In the middle of hardship, a few bites of dense, dark, date-studded pudding could feel like a genuine gift, a small proof that the war had not taken everything sweet away. Third pattern break. Here is something soldiers figured out that food companies later cashed in on. Faced with the same bland cans day after day, GIs became inventors, mixing and matching components to build meals the quartermaster never imagined. They stirred cheese into beans, layered meat with jam, crumbled crackers into everything to fix the texture, and turned pound cake and fruit into rough desserts. The most legendary weapon in this fight was a tiny bottle of hot sauce. In 1966, the McElhenney Company, makers of Tabasco, printed something called the Charlie Ration Cookbook, a small booklet of recipes for jazzing up C-Rations, and wrapped it around a miniature bottle of their sauce packed to fit inside a ration can. Soldiers in Vietnam carried those little bottles everywhere, and a few drops could rescue almost any meal on the line. What those men were doing in their foxholes, transforming cheap, shelf-stable components into something they actually wanted to eat, is exactly what shows up now on menus as rustic, resourceful, from-scratch cooking. They were not chasing a trend. They were surviving, and they made it taste better with their own hands. Number 5. Cocoa beverage powder. The cocoa packet was a small square of comfort that punched far above its weight. Stirred into a canteen cup of hot water, it made a rich, sweet chocolate drink that warmed a man from the inside on a cold night and gave a homesick soldier a taste of childhood. On freezing mornings and long, damp watches, that cup of hot cocoa was pure morale in liquid form. Men doctored it endlessly, stirring in crumbled crackers for body, a spoon of peanut butter for richness, or a dab of jam for extra sweetness. Some mixed it with their coffee to make a rough field mocha, years before anyone thought to sell such a thing. It was simple, cheap, and beloved, one of the few items on the line that felt like an indulgence rather than mere fuel. A soldier holding a warm cup of cocoa in cold hands, steam rising into the dark, was a soldier holding onto a small piece of the life he left behind. Number 4. Instant coffee. If any single thing was sacred in the C-Ration, it was coffee. The little packet of instant coffee in the accessory pack was a soldier's first ritual of the morning and his last comfort at night, and men guarded it accordingly. Stirred into hot water, heated over a fuel tab, a pinch of C4, or an engine block, it produced a strong, bitter cup that had almost nothing in common with a diner's brew, and soldiers drank it gratefully anyway. Coffee was not just caffeine. It was routine, warmth, and a moment of stillness carved out of chaos. Men gathered around a heating cup the way people gather around a fire, trading stories and complaints and the small talk that kept them human. A soldier low on coffee felt the loss all day, just like the cowboys of an earlier century who drank it by the gallon. The American soldier ran on coffee, and the war would not have moved without it. Number 3. The tropical chocolate bar. Here is the ingredient food scientists are only now rediscovering. Ordinary chocolate melts into a useless mess in tropical heat, so the Army worked with Hershey to engineer a bar that would not. The result was a dense, dark chocolate bar, built to survive jungle temperatures without turning to soup, packed for the men fighting in the Pacific and later in Vietnam. The early emergency versions were deliberately made to taste only slightly better than a boiled potato. So hungry, soldiers would not devour their survival ration on the first day. The later tropical bars were more palatable, but still tough, still dense, still built for war rather than pleasure. Getting a heat-stable chocolate to also taste good was a genuine food science problem, and companies today are chasing that exact goal for hot climates, quietly reinventing what the military solved generations ago. Soldiers gnawed those hard bars for a fast hit of sugar and calories when they needed to keep moving. It was chocolate designed not to comfort, but to endure. Number 2. C-Ration canned fruit. The single most fought-over item in the entire C-Ration was not any meat, any dessert, or any drink. It was fruit, peaches, pears, apricots, or the beloved fruit cocktail, sealed in a can with sweet cold syrup, and a soldier who drew one felt like he had won the day. After weeks of grease, salt, and gray meat, the clean, bright sweetness of canned peaches in syrup was almost overwhelming, a taste so pure it could stop a man mid-bite and send him somewhere far away. The syrup itself was treasured, sipped straight from the can, or poured over crackers and pound cake to make a real dessert. Because fruit was so universally craved, it drove the fiercest trading and the quickest hands when a case was opened. Men swapped their best meat cans for a single tin of peaches without hesitation. In a ration built for the body, canned fruit was the one thing that fed something else, the part of a soldier that still remembered summer, home, and a bowl of fruit on a kitchen table. Number 1. Pound cake. At the very top sits the most beloved item any American soldier ever pulled from a C-Ration can. The pound cake was small, dense, buttery, and moist, a genuine slice of cake sealed in a tin and carried into the worst places on earth. To a man living on beans and mystery meat, it was a miracle, the closest thing to a bakery, a birthday, a Sunday afternoon that the field would ever provide. Soldiers saved their pound cake for the hardest days, hoarded it, traded fiercely for it, and shared it with a buddy as the highest gesture of friendship the ration allowed. Topped with a spoon of fruit or a smear of jam, it became a real dessert, eaten slowly to make it last. Veterans across every war it appeared in remember that pound cake with a tenderness that surprises them, because it was never really about the cake. It was about the reminder, delivered in a tin can in the middle of a war, that somebody back home still believed these men deserved something sweet. That was the whole point. Not the calories, not the survival. The dignity of a small, good thing, saved for a moment that needed it. Here is my challenge. Find one of these this week. The canned corned beef hash, a tin of peaches in heavy syrup, a simple pound cake, and eat it the way a soldier would. Cold, out of the can, standing up, with nothing fancy around it. Then think about the man who would have traded 3 meals for it. Drop the one you would actually eat in the comments. I want to know if the pound cake gets more love than the peaches, and whether anybody's grandfather still had a John Wayne opener on his keyring. Because these were not just rations. They were how a country fed its sons through 3 wars, 1 tin can at a time, and the men who ate them never forgot a single bite.